Trades, throw me where you want to.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I've been thinking. It's funny. I've been thinking a lot about this over the past month in particular. So, and that's because I found this. I'm going to get her name wrong. I think her name is Tanya Riley. But she did a talk at Lead Dev about glue work. Seen the reward, so I'm just going to hang back and I'm going to stick to literally what it says in my job description, and that's been labelled as quiet quitting. And then here we come as quality engineers, testers, quality coaches, basically saying we have to be everywhere in the process because quality spans everything, which is true. Here's the problem, like Michael just said. When you say you're a tester, you can get thrown in anywhere, do anything. And so what it says in your job description may not be the thing that needs doing right now. And as a tester, generally speaking, we're really good at that. Like looking at things holistically and then deciding, we need to go and do X, Y, and Z. And so I think there's an interplay between those three things that I want to explore more, research more, because I think you're right. We are best placed to do that stuff, but sometimes it can have some negative consequences if we don't manage it properly.
Absolutely. One of the areas that I laughed about and I thought about from your talk, because as you were describing it, the fact that we were able to very often, using the glue work as an example, this is a phrase that reminded me from back in my earlier musical career. I was a musician prior to being in software test. And I tell people a lot of the time that my experiences being a musician gave me a master class level education, if you will, about how to be a software tester, because, hold on, we're going to break off this.
Hello everybody, taking a chance with this break. We are about to have lunch here. I saw these two guys having a talk, having lots of fun and doing a podcast, and I decided why not to stream it as well, because they were having an awesome conversation. So quickly for the streaming, for the ones that do not know, Vernon Richards.
Hi.
And my amigo Michael Larsen.
Hey everybody.
And well, I don't want to interrupt. I just wanted to capture all these awesome conversations that you were having and to share it with the world. So keep going, gentlemen.
Go ahead, we'll pick right back up again. This is for my recording side, so I know where to stop.
Behind
3,
the magic in
2, 1. Go ahead.
Behind the magic in podcasting. You can
exactly.
tell how the sausage is being done.
So, reiterating, you had mentioned this whole bit about glue work, and this was a phrase that was applied to me by my guitar player, Carlos, and early on I wasn't sure how to take it, but now I really appreciate it, especially from the perspective of software testing. When he had described what my role in the band was, he said, yes, I get it, you're the singer, and I get the fact that that's not really what your role in the band is. Like, that's your role as a performer, and that's your role as high wire on stage and recording. your role in the band, though, that he pointed out to me. He says, whether you're going to take this as a compliment or something else is not for me to say, but you are without question the psychic glue of this group.
Yeah.
And I had to think about that for a while. I said, what exactly does that mean? And what he meant by it was, you are the individual that through whatever, whether it's your personality or your willingness to solve problems or your just ability to roll with the punches, you are able to take disparate people who, if left to their own devices, would not get along with each other, and you're willing to put yourself in the middle of it and say, there seems to be a problem here, how can I help?
Yeah.
And that's a phrase I've used many times over the years, is there seems to be a problem, how can I help? Either I'm a glutton for punishment, or more to the point, it's just, I like the variety, I like to solve problems, I like to see people get along, and I like to move forward.
Yeah.
And whatever that takes, and if it's, okay, that's not quite my job description, but it's not anybody's, so let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Either I can say this is a cool thing to do, or I can say this might be fun.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
And more times than not, that's where I find myself, hey, we need somebody who can do tiger testing, rapid response because of our customers running into a problem here. Yeah. Michael, can you get on a plane and fly to Nashville and go into the wiring closet over here and help us figure out what's going on with this content delivery network? Sure, I can do that. I don't know if I'll be successful, but I'm willing to try.
Yeah.
I did have that happen one time.
Announcements happening. Oh my God, we're about to have the special guest speaker at this moment. We'd better check the schedule because recording is going to get interesting.
Yeah.
Keep going, gentlemen.
3, 2, 1, go. To finish this conversation up, though. Point that I wanted to make here is that the virtue, and what I wanted to follow up with Vernon, and I will cut this considerably. One of the things that I've always found interesting is if you're willing to be ambiguous in your role, and I don't mean ambiguous as in take on whatever, but to be open-minded to the positions that you take on. There might be a need that comes up that's just not being met, and that can actually offer you channels to your career that can give you considerably greater longevity than if you're just, I'm the tester, I test the product, that's all that I do. I've found myself being a Jenkins administrator or being a build master because the person that was doing that was no longer able to for various reasons, and I knew just enough to get by. And then that turns into a multi-year commitment. Or somebody said, hey, we want to explore some options for doing accessibility, and we don't have anybody who is on our team who really knows that. Would you be willing to take this on? 10 years ago, I said, I don't really know much about it. Sure. And what do you know about me now is that's my main bread and butter when I come and talk to conferences. But it wouldn't have happened had somebody just said, we don't have somebody to do this. Are you willing to?
That, I was just checking, it is Tanya Riley. She is awesome. Twitter handle is Where Is Tanya. Go check her out. So the point that Tanya made in her talk about glue work is, if you don't articulate what you do well enough when it comes to your career progression conversations, your promotion conversations, nothing that you did is tangible or even perceivable to the business. I'm generalizing here, right? And so you have to be quite careful about taking on these opportunities, and they are opportunities, without like getting the recognition or the reward, if that's what's important to you. If you're just like, well, I'll just take the skill, I'll take the experience, and I can parlay that into something tangible later, that's fine. But if people are looking at you kind of saying, well, Michael, you were employed as a tester and you've done no testing, you've been you've been in this damn cupboard pissing around with these wires and figuring out CDNs. That's not your job. You'll be like, yeah, but if I didn't do that, the whole project would have failed. Our number one customer would have bailed. That rhyme, by the way. Don't hit the bars, okay. So that's the thing to be mindful of, and it's like there's a balance or a trade-off to be made there. I mean, one of the solutions could be to work at a place where that kind of thing isn't a negative. It's not frowned upon that you are pitching in where the need is. That could just be a overall risk mitigation strategy for that. But yeah, I think as testers, I mean, the reason why that struck with me is because I've been in a situation situations where I'm brought onto a team to help with testing. They want me to interact with the product and look for problems. I'm like, cool, I can do that. And I join. And I suddenly realized, wait a minute, you know, if we change how we collaborate over here, it will mean that I actually have to look for less problems. There'll just be less problems in the product. So I'll start advocating for that. People are like, hey Vernon, why are you poking around over there? You shouldn't be poking around over there. We just want you to sit here and interact with the product and look for bugs. That's what we want you to do. It's like, well, yeah, but that's not where the value is. To me, the example I always use is, it's like getting in a plumber and you're saying, well, the leak, we've got some damage in our ceiling in this corner of the room. And the plumber's like, oh, well, that's because the leak is in the opposite corner and it's just running around whatever buttress and the damage is over there, but the problem is over here. And they're like, I don't want to hear about what the problem is over there. I want you to fix the damn leak. You're like, but that's not, they connect. What do you mean? Like, that's
following with that example, at times is like you just fix the side that seems to be broken, but you don't pay attention
the underlying
to the rest.
Exactly.
And you'll have the same problem again.
And exactly, and that's what I think. There's some interesting stuff going on there. I think people like Michael and me to some degree, that one of our strengths when it comes to software testing is our ability to step back and see the whole and kind of say, oh, well, actually, because I'm just a generalist or I'm not scared of tackling weird and wonderful new things, I don't mind going and doing X, Y, and Z. But for some people, that can have some negative consequences. I've experienced that, and I think we need to talk more about that. Actually,
that is a very good point. When you start to kind of scout into different areas or things that you may be good at, you may be really interesting, and probably the organization doesn't recognize or want you dealing or touching that. That's good for you because eventually you'll end up with that. Find a place where you can get that fun, and of course you will grow over there and hidden skills that you will foster and develop better. Who knows? It's your new passion, your new career, right?
Yeah, you just reminded me. Like I've described this to a bunch of people like this. It's like I've got a few friends, and more people are doing this, who they cared so much about quality and testing that they're no longer testers. Mm-hmm. Think about that, right? They cared so much about quality and testing that they were like, actually, I can impact those things more
from the
by
inside.
not being a tester, actually, but by being an SRE, but by being an engineering manager, by being a head of engineering, a CTO, etc., etc., etc.
Presenter at conferences about quality.
Yeah, because now, again, generalizing, testers and quality folks don't necessarily have the levers, access to the levers, right? And so these people are like, well, how do I get access to the levers? Oh, if I'm this kind of role or that kind of role, then I can do that. Somebody like Michael, because he will just go and like investigate things and get thrown at the deep end. Like he's probably built the goddamn lever in a lot of the places where he's at. So it's like, okay, I'm the person who's gonna pull that thing and impact the quality more broadly.
I've had my moments.
Yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, it's that kind of, I want to kind of explore the interplay of all those things, because I think it's worth talking about, because quality engineers and testers are asked to do that work. But then at the same time, it's almost we get pushback for doing that work. So like, what is all that about? Because it needs doing, and or it's helpful. Like, what needs to be different about that whole situation to eliminate the pushback or have the work valued?
So on this point, and I think this is interesting. I mean, we could go any number of tangents on this, but I want to come back to the point of, because the key here, and I think the theme I want to emphasize here, is curating your career, which is the key part of what your talk was about. So let's say you have somebody who's relatively young in the testing world, maybe just a couple of years, maybe they've primarily just focused on manual testing, or they've done okay, they've done a certain amount of work, but they're like, what's next? Where do I want to go next? If you were going to counsel, say, a young 20-something tester, or older, I'm not trying to be ageist here, but let's face it, somebody who first gets into the field and they've done testing for a bit, and they've reached that stage of there must be more to life than this. What avenues or what things would you counsel somebody who's having that conversation? I don't know what I quite want to do next, but I want to think of something. How would you have that conversation?
I would probably coach them through it. And when I say coach, I mean from the perspective of being very non-directive, but asking them open questions to help them gain some insight on their own situation, so that actually they can answer their own question. So I would be asking them things like, well, what makes you want to do something different? Like, where are the frustrations in what you're doing? What are the things that you really enjoy and you'd like to get better at? And just explore what's going on for them right now, so that they can understand what it is that they're unhappy about, or so that they can understand what's the opportunity that they're trying to take advantage of or leverage or create. And then it's a matter of thinking about, okay, what's the next step that you can take in that direction? So it would be, my first port of call wouldn't be to tell people stuff, it would be to kind of help them explore the space. And then if it made sense, if I had some suggestions or some insights, I would, try and offer those into the conversation to try and help.
It's kind of tough for what you're saying, because I would see a mix as well. One, very good, as you say, the reasons for looking for different grounds, but at the same time, QA is so vast, different, and fits so many personalities, learning styles, and likes or dislikes. I think that's a very good one, like guidance, coaching, like, okay, I see your personality on this side, I see you here or there. You reminded me quickly of a coworker that was super excited of becoming a manager. And as much as I try, like, you don't have manager material, you will suffer through it. Really? Do you want to go there? You truly try something else. There are so many cool things in QA. And it's like that guidance here eventually ended up going, trying it, and struggled big time. And we know people that you with the experience, you have been places, you have been in projects, as well as you, Michael, you have all the feeling, and you can quickly tell, like, hey, I think you will be good here, or why don't you try this or that. Mentorship, I think that's a very good big step, right, on those career or swings in life.
Having mentors and even more powerfully sponsors, that can really be a career boost. But to come back to the question, it's like that's what I would do. Like, to build on what Leandro said, the space is so massive, so you can offer people those observations about, this space is massive. So, I've seen people with your strengths and attributes do very well doing X, Y, and Z, and here's how those strengths played into their success. Maybe you could do that, and just give people options, because the other thing is, if they're new to a field, they may not even know what's possible. So at the appropriate time to kind of share what's possible for people can be massive. Do you know what I mean? Just letting people know, okay, you're going to hear some static and some flack about testing and how that's the bottom of the food chain, but actually you can leverage that into X, Y, and Z situation and really come out winning.
And out of what you mentioned, dumb question or external, and probably some others are in a similar page. What would be the difference between a mentor and a sponsor?
The way I understand it is, so if you use the analogy of, I'm trying to achieve something in a career and I need to get through that door. So a mentor can share with you, oh, here's how I got through a similar door. Like, I used this lockpick and with this particular lock and I got through it. Whereas a sponsor just gets some dynamite and destroys the door. And then shoves you through the door.
An enabler or something like that.
They just eliminate, they just like, I am gonna get you I'll get you through the door. Don't worry about the door. I'll get you through the door. Whereas a mentor's like, hey, that door, you can totally get through that door. Here's how you get through the door. You do this and this and this. You're like, okay, cool. The sponsor just eradicates the door.
That is a good way to look at it. For anybody who's familiar with the podcast, you know that I have mentioned the name Ken Peer a number of times. Ken passed away back in 2015, and Ken was a huge influence on a particular part and time in my career when I was at a crossroads, to be honest. I had worked as a tester for almost 20 years, and I had reached that point to where I was just sort of, I still liked what I did, but I was spinning my wheels, let's just put it that way. And it was interesting, I was just at a point to where I felt disinterested, not terribly motivated, was looking for my next thing, and I just posted to a group of friends saying, well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news on this, but I guess I'm probably gonna have to start looking for a new position pretty soon. I'm not quite sure what to do. Ken was the first one who reached out to me, says, you're available? Hey, do X, Y, and Z, I need this from you. Can you get it to me by tomorrow? I went, yeah, sure, here you go. And he said, great. Hey, what would you think about coming down? We'll just do something real quick and have a quick dinner sometime. Would you be cool to come down to Palo Alto? Sure, yeah, okay. He said, hey, while I'm here, my vice president of my company happens to be here, and somebody we just recently hired to work in the testing team is going to be here. Am I just sitting down and chat with us for a bit? Yeah, I could do that. So in a way, not so much that he was sponsoring me through, but he was basically saying, I have an idea, I know how I can make this work, I have pull, I have faith in you, just trust me on this.
Yeah.
And I did, and he was able to bring me in. And then I realized, because I'd known Ken, and I'd been very experienced with his personality and his somewhat brusque attitude, but I'd never been on the receiving end of Ken to suddenly say, oh, I'm working for this guy now. Holy cow, this is going to be interesting. And it was. What was great about it was he had no filter whatsoever. And if he felt that something was good, he was going to tell you. If he felt something that was stupid, he was going to tell you.
Right.
And he would start off, okay, hey, I need you to take care of A, B, and C. How we look at, you're off the rails, come over here. Right. And he would just he wasn't telling you what to do, but if he recognized you were floundering, he wasn't just going to sit there and wait for you to ask him to, okay, you're off the rails, what did we miss? And it wasn't, are you dumb or did you miss out? I either didn't explain something or some piece of knowledge that should have been here wasn't here. Let's see how we can fix that. Okay. And that was hugely helpful because he didn't stop and say, I'm not going to help you. You're going to have to just figure this out and good luck to you. If I have something that can smooth the way, I'm going to smooth the way. I'm going to remove the blockers. I'm going to get the BS out of your way so you can be effective. And once I figure out where your effectiveness lies, then I'm going to encourage even more of that and give you a chance to make that happen. It's how I got into the accessibility space was literally, we need somebody to deal with this. And right now, I don't have the bandwidth for it. Patty doesn't have the bandwidth for it. Can I count on you to do this? Sure. Awesome. Have at it.
Right.
Any questions, let me know, or I can get you in touch with somebody who can help you. And through that process, this was rather cool. And I learned quite a bit from it. And the interesting thing was he opened up an advocacy avenue for me that I didn't realize I wanted to be part of to begin with. And then once that got a bite and I realized, there's an entire community of people that in our software world is underrepresented and needs more voices. That was exciting, and it made me go, I want to work with this. I want to be part of this. And then it became an assignment, became an advocacy, became a avocation, if you will. And here I am talking about it several years after it ceased to be my primary job function. I haven't done a specific accessibility project for my company in 5 years, maybe. But it's still what people are interested in hearing me talk about, and I'll talk about it as long as people want me to, and that's great. But it also means that at my company, if something comes up and says, hey, we have this question, we have some people coming on, and we have an accessibility component, would you be willing to help? Of course I'd be willing to help them. What do they need? Or what can I do to help them get where they need to? Here's my tool set, here's some of the things about, here's an entire series of talks that I've recorded and papers that I've written. If they're helpful, feel free to use them. If you need me to sit down and do a coaching session, I'm happy to do that too. So those are all options that I think when you see those, again, bringing this back to the curation of your career, you might find that a happenstance conversation or a side assignment that maybe wasn't intended to be a long-term thing can have that happen. I call these hinge pin moments. Like a door opens
100%.
and a hinge moves a certain way and your path goes that direction, and then another hinge pin will move you a different direction.
Right,
and the benefit, and what I like to see in testing, and I think this rolls this well, is as software testers, we are able to move those hinges in a variety of ways because there's so many positions that we can apply our skills.
Exactly.
We're not just programmers, we're not just people who test. We can touch on any number of things. We can become program managers. We can become automation specialists. We could actually, if we want to, take a sideways step into leading a customer support team. We could become sales engineers and actually help the people that are on the sales side of the house close deals, or say, oh, you need some help with the technical aspect of this product. Here's some of the things you need to be aware of. Here are some of the pitfalls. So yeah, it's wide open, and it's only limited, I would think, to your own personal interests.
Yeah, totally agree.
It's awesome how you mentioned that you got like, as you say, it was half mentor, but more like enabling you. I would say, and sounded a little bit like almost luring you into something that he had the feeling like he'll fit there. I'm gonna put like breadcrumbs in front of him towards this way, and you didn't went for the breadcrumbs, the whole loaf of bread. You got it, and it's funny how people can see that and guide you a little bit, put it in front of you, and are awesome changes in life, changes in perspective, probably from a wish that you had, as you said in your talk, like I'm looking for something. And some others have been there. I know some friends that suddenly, which of you ended up in testing by accident?
Oh yeah.
Right? I mean, were you assigned to a testing project suddenly?
No,
or?
you know what I realized? I thought I'd end up here by accident, but I didn't actually. But I didn't anticipate I would stay.
Okay.
So my original plan was to be a games designer.
Oh, cool.
And the typical route into that is games testing.
Game testing.
Oh boy.
So I deliberately became a games tester. But then when I found out, like, so the games, for the folks watching, like games testing, if you're in, private industry, like, I don't know, working at an e-commerce company or whatever, and you think you're the bottom of the food chain, go test at a games company. You will know what that means. And so,
hello, Konami. Hello to the ex-Konamicated out there. I feel this.
Oh my goodness.
I worked for Konami Digital Entertainment from 2003 until 2005.
Game tester too?
As a game tester,
Oh my gosh,
yes.
okay.
Through an interesting avenue, in the sense that their job description asked for all the QA requirements, which I was able to check off in my sleep. But the last listing was the one that caught my attention. It said, excellent singing voice, a major plus.
Oh man, that's you. What are you talking about?
I went, okay, hold on a second. So I had to write them in, and I said, well, excellent singing voice is a subjective opinion, but I do have some CDs you can listen to, exactly. And I did happen to sing for a hard rock heavy metal band in the late 80s and early 90s. I don't know if that's what you're interested in, but here you go. Here's some links to some stuff I've done, and so what do you think? And they called me back and they said, hey, yes, here's the reason why. We're bringing out a game called Karaoke Revolution.
Okay.
And we need somebody who can test it on the expert mode.
Right.
Okay. And then that started. I had also just gone back to school at that point in time. This was after the dot-com bust. And being a non-degreed person was a liability at that point, not so much. The 90s, nobody cared. Between those few years, they cared a lot. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go back and do this. And so I went to work for them for that purpose. And then I got a chance to game test for a couple of years. But what the fun part was, or the interesting part was, that I was going through the Karaoke Revolution game, and I'd stopped doing that. And at a certain point, and if you've never been in the game testing world, once the game is done, it's very common for them to say, okay, thanks, and you're fired. Or laid off. And they have non-rehire clauses, which is really obnoxious. It's very exclusionary, and the point that, so if you're a game tester, you have to be willing to be nomadic and say, okay, Konami just laid me off and I can't be hired again for another 90 days, so I guess I'll go to EA and I'll work there. And then when they lay off, okay, I guess I can go back to Konami, or I can go to Activision or some other company. And so it creates this, don't want to say this from the perspective of this is how it is now. That's absolutely how it was then. And to be able to build some seniority was really hard. But it was also because, everybody loves video games. I would kill to test video games.
That's my take on it. It's like, they could find someone to do this. Literally, they could just cattle hook somebody off the street to come and do the job. When I got hired, it was because of my customer service experience.
And I had a similar experience because of that.
So it was like, okay, we've got this opening in the customer service department. Can you come help us? And then when they had an opening in the test team, it was like, oh, well, you know the games and how to support these games. So you should just come across and actually test them. And
that was also my saving grace, because once I got finished with doing the Karaoke Revolution bit, I thought for sure, all right, probably going to get laid off from this, and I guess I'll have to find something else. And they said, actually, we need some help in the customer service division. We got a whole bunch of things that are, we have some problems that we need to look at. Would you be willing to give them a hand? And I said, okay, sure. And I did. And then after a little while, yes, some people did get laid off and some people got rehired. But then again, it got to the point to where everybody was assigned to a different game, and I was still doing the customer service side. I thought, did I do something wrong? And the lead tester said, no, actually, you did something very right, because, to be blunt, and this is the way that he put it at the time, is to be blunt, a lot of the game testing that we do can be done by literally anybody. But it does take somebody with a special temperament to go in and diagnose the customer service problems quickly and effectively and communicate them well. And you're able to do that. So if it's okay, we'd love to keep utilizing it. I mean, if we have a need for you to join us on another game, certainly we will. But at this point in time, we'd really love it if you could give us a hand here. So sure. And that actually, I was able to keep working for a good 7 or 8 months because of that. And then right after the holiday rush, that's when everybody kind of got we're going down to Skeleton Crew, sorry, thanks for doing here. And I was like, it's fine, I'm in school, it doesn't really matter. This is just a burn reduction rate for me, honestly. And then I thought, I'll just focus back on school, and I only had to do it for a couple of months for that. And then they contacted me back and said, hey, we're kind of getting backlogged because of the holiday things again. And plus we're bringing out another Karaoke Revolution Volume 2. Would you be willing to come back? Yeah, sure. And then that was a continued year. But because I had that ability to jump back and forth between the teams, and they saw that I could jump back and forth between the teams, I was more valuable. And that's where I realized, okay, so if I'm willing to take some vagary there and say, here's some tech support work, here's some testing work, and I can flip a coin on whichever given day you want to use me, and I'm fine with that. That doubles your chances, maybe even quadruples your chances. And to bring this all around, and I realize we'll probably have to wrap this up because we've been talking for 40 minutes. It's awesome. There's so many opportunities that we have here. And again, if you're open to being vague and you're open to some oddities that may not be an automatic fit, but you're willing to play around with it for a bit, that could actually open up many more opportunities for you.
Yeah.
What I think connects of what you're saying, and it's going to be an agile pun or very relevant to nowadays. You were able to switch hats. You were a T-shaped person big time, and that's what helped you and what allowed you to stick around and to improve your career, to get a hold on it. And I don't know, Vernon, you got me thinking. You didn't want it to be a tester. You were into video games, right?
I wanted to be a tester, but that was an interim step.
to get to video games, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. You made me kind of reframe my mindset because you lifted your hand like tester by accident. Yes, sure, that happened to me. Me too. Manager, like, hey, you know this? Can you test this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, exactly as you. And you're the very first one. Like, no, I saw testing. It was about something that I'm interested, but you went into it.
Yeah.
But it's funny how many of us are just thrown into it because we have other skills.
Exactly.
That are very useful in testing, in QA, in all the beautiful umbrella of activities that we can do.
Yep.
And I think that's I take a lot from what you're saying, Michael. Get those extra skills, and you have no idea how many other things you will be able to reap out of.
It's difficult to predict.
What is going to come out of that?
This is the thing about curating your career. On one hand, you have to be, like, being clear about the direction that you're headed in and the outcome that you're looking for, I think is helpful and important. But at the same time, you need to be open to the opportunities that will present themselves along the way. There's that, what is the name of that book?
They will.
There's this really good, is it Paulo Coelho?
Paulo Coelho?
Yeah, what's the book that he
The guy behind The Alchemist?
The Alchemist. There's a passage in The Alchemist. I'm going to butcher this story, but it's basically the story of this. I don't know if it's the main protagonist, but he ends up in some palace, and the ruler of this thing gives him this spoon with some water in and tells him to go and have a look around the palace and, report back what he sees. And he comes back and he reports back what he sees. And he says, yeah, but what about the water in the spoon? And he's spilt all the water in the spoon because he was too busy paying attention. He says, right, you got to here's some more water. Go and do it again, but make sure you don't spill any water. Go and explore this part of the palace, tell him what you see. And he comes back. He goes, what do you see? And he's like, well, I have no idea, but I've still got all the water because I was focusing on the water. And I think the moral of it was, you need to be able to go and pay attention to your surroundings without losing track of how much water you've got in the spoon. I've almost certainly butchered that. Please go read the book. It's awesome.
I like that. That's great.
That's what you're trying to do with your career. You're trying to be intentional and
accept serendipity.
Yes, opportunist at the same time and flexible.
Love it. Okay, so I want to use this time to kind of wrap up here, since I am talking to pretty well-known people, but just in case somebody's listening here going, who's Vernon? Who is Senor Performo? How can we find out more about you? Vernon, I know that you are with House of Test UK, but somebody wants to reach out to you.
I'm not with House of Test UK anymore, actually. But you can find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Tester from LEIC. LEIC is an abbreviation for Leicester. So it's Tester from Leicester. You can find me on LinkedIn as well, Vernon Richards. I blog at Typeshare, so typeshare.co/Vernon Richards, no spaces in between Vernon Richards. And you can find my posts there. And I've got talks on YouTube from all these various conferences and stuff. So hit me up in those places whenever you want.
Fantastic. And Leandro?
My turn. Okay, I'm a Leandro Melendez, also known as Señor Performo, DevRel and advocate with Grafana K6. For the ones watching, probably you can see me on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook as Leandro Melendez or Señor Performo. The YouTube channel in Spanish is just Señor Performo. In English, Señor Performo, ENG. Questions, comments, critics, everything, it's very welcome. And I got to add, I am also snitching a little bit of this and taking an advantage of having Michael here. So now I'm gonna make Michael present to the camera and tell about yourself and how can people reach out to you.
All right. Well, hold on. Before we do that, just so I don't get this whole recording and have to go through it, that's my way of saying thanks for joining us in a unusual and live conversation from Pacific Northwest Software Quality Conference. Vernon and Leandro, thank you so much for being with us. And for those on the testing show, we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Adios.
Bye.
All right.
Now to the live.
My turn. Okay, well, this is exciting. Thank you. First off, thank you very much for helping participate with this. And because next week I'm going to be in New York for a very different reason. My wife and I are going to be celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary in December.
Congratulations.
And we wanted to do a big trip. She wanted to go to New York. I don't want to go to New York in December. It's going to be cold. So we decided to push it a couple of months early so that we could enjoy some good weather for it. So we're preemptively celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
So,
Wow.
hi, honey.
Take a look. Hope she's tuning.
I hope she tunes.
The only other person watching this, that's a usual.
So I guess you want me to talk a bit about my own talk that I did, or what would you?
Yeah.
Go ahead
I mean,
with it.
for the ones watching, I already jumped in. The talk was happening, and I wanted to grab a little bit. But both of you gentlemen did very good talks already.
Thank you.
And I managed to crash yours a little bit. Please, for the people, could you give us a little
Sure.
introduction on what you do and what was the talk about?
Okay, so primarily what I do, I am a senior quality assurance engineer, and I say that because that's my job title. I have to officially use that. It's on my paycheck. But I'm a little bit of everything. I'm a jack of all trades. I do support work. I do Tiger testing if necessary. I do automation. I dig into whatever is necessary. Right now, literally, I am working on a quasi-developing API. So I'm trying to learn a bit more about what it is to be able to effectively test that and gather things together. And the last few stories have been, hey, learn about these APIs, learn about how to hopefully effectively test them. You need to take some LinkedIn learning classes, go ahead and do that, make stories out of them, it's fine, because the group that I was originally assigned to is changing their focus, and while they're changing their focus and getting on new things, they're like, we don't necessarily have something defined for you right now for what we're gonna do, but now, in some cases, if you don't have a defined job that you need to do, that could be bad news in the sense of we don't quite know what to do with you, so we're going to let you go because we don't really see a need. But what they're saying is, no, you've been around here long enough. We're not concerned about that. We know at a certain point when we need to pull you in on something, you're going to be ready for it. Use this time to go and do something different and unique and interesting. And in this case, we have some APIs that are sort of documented, but there's a lot of stuff that's missing, and we kind of need to build those up, and so start experimenting. See what you can find, see what we've covered, make some calls, see what replies, maybe see if we can flesh out a bit more. Look in the code to see what interesting things. There's stuff we haven't documented. Would you be interested in documenting that? Would you be interested in filling up some of that stuff? And so my story list is, figure out whatever you want to. And that's unusual.
Yeah.
But it's neat to be able to say, my company, at least right now, seems to have enough trust in me to say, write your own stuff, and when we need you, we'll call you back in for something more direct. But for now, make your own stuff up, whatever. And that's neat. But prior to being assigned to this particular team, for a number of years, I worked for a company that was called Social Text. Social Text got acquired by another company called PeopleFluent. And PeopleFluent's primary thing is, CRMs for HR and for learning technologies, because we were acquired by a company in the UK called Learning Technologies Group, which I believe is in Bristol. Actually, I think they might have an office in London and an office in Bristol. I work with people from Bristol. That's how I know that. But it's interesting because it's a interesting cross section of cultures. So, my parent company's in England, and the sub-child company is in Raleigh, and my engineering team is in San Francisco, and we're all remote workers because we no longer have offices. We all work from home. It's interesting. So it's allowed us that vagary, and it's allowed us that ability to do whatever. Well, a number of years ago, I was asked to focus on accessibility, specifically an accessibility audit that we had that came back with a boatload of issues. So that boatload of issues were going to need to be development work. That development work was going to need to be done. That new development work was going to need to be tested, and somebody needed to have enough of a background on accessibility so that they could actually say, we've met this or we haven't. And by hook or by crook, I was going to be that guy. So, all right then. And so I started diving into that. And a neat thing about this, coming back to the whole idea of mentor versus sponsor, because I was involved with and was playing around with Weekend Testing Americas for a while, and I was one of the people doing the work with that. One of the people that was helping me with that was a guy by the name of Albert Gareev. And Albert's in Canada and living in around Toronto. And I remember that when we were doing this stuff I had mentioned, oh, by the way, I've been asked to do this thing about accessibility. He said, you're going to be doing accessibility? Dude, that's my bread and butter. That's literally what I do for a living. What do you need? How about you let me plan a few weekend testing things and let's just go through it. And so I got these sessions that we did, and working with tools and working with how to deal with it. And he helped me really start to understand this and start to understand, there's Section 508, but Section 508's only for America. If you want to do, Canada's got its own ADA, and there's some other stuff over here, and there's some other stuff over here, and there's a broader group. I can help you focus in on that. And he gave me some of those tools to where when I came back to work, wow, how did you learn about this stuff so fast? I don't know if it was fast, but I got it. And then that started so Albert and I started working with this, and when I was working with the Association for Software Testing, I was on their board for a while, and I was actually the president for a year, and Albert reached out to me and said, so I love doing tech work, but I'm not much of a presenter. English is my second language, I'm Russian, and I'm willing to do it, that's fine. I can cover all the details, I can cover the tech work, but I'm not one who's really comfortable giving long presentations. You can do that. Would you partner with me for CAS 2015? Nice. I'll put the workshop together, I have all the details for it, but would you be the front man for this performance? I'll be the lead guitarist if you'll be the front man.
Familiar,
I went, okay, yes, I can do that. And I went and I did that, and that was my first time presenting on the topic of accessibility. And after I did that, I thought, okay, I can handle this. And Albert gave me all this great technical detail. Amazing. And then I got invited to Agile Testing Days, and Albert said, I'm not going to be able to make that. You know what to do, go ahead. If you want to take it, here, you have my permission, put me in. But if you do use my stuff, and if you use some of the conversations, at least give me a co-credit. And so for years, I did exactly that. I said, by the way, if you see any talk that I give on accessibility, and you think that I'm knowledgeable in any stretch of the imagination, Albert Gareev deserves a co-credit.
Rebroadcasting.
Yeah. So Albert, props to you. Thanks for that. And interestingly enough, a technique that you taught me 7-8 years ago, in fact, it was a conversation for Weekend Testing Americas, is still a center part of my talk. So the talk that I did, how's that for a long way to get back to the point? It's about the intersection of accessibility and inclusive design. And I make a distinction because accessibility requires next step technology to get you where you need to be. Inclusive design makes the assumption that we want to configure as much as possible so as many people as possible can experience something without the need for definitive assistive technology. Like, we can say that if you put closed captioning in on a video, right? Is that assistive technology? If you're hard of hearing or deaf, yes it is. But is that the only way that you benefit from it? If you happen to be in a conference or something and you're seeing something, just here's a perfect example. Let's say somebody posts something on TikTok, but you can't bring it up to listen to it because you're in the middle of, let's say that would be rude, but I want to check this out real quick. Oh, hey, there's a closed caption on it. Click it. I mean, I'm perfectly capable of hearing the audio, but it's rude for me to do so. But I can go and look at the closed caption. Okay, I got the gist of what this is about. That's great. So that's an example of, here is a piece of assistive technology that I don't have to use in that last mile capability, but it absolutely benefits me.
It's a very good addition to have.
So that's where inclusive design means there's multiple ways of getting information to users, and they can choose how to use it without necessarily having a limitation. Whereas accessibility is, no, there is an actual limitation here, and without this piece, without a capacitive touch stick that, say, a mobile impaired user would be able to interact with the screen, they're not going to. So if somebody has to use a capacitive touch stick because they literally can't move a mouse, or they have to use a blow straw to actually press buttons and such, that must be there for that product to work for them. And so to be accessible may require a considerable amount of work, but to be inclusive in your design can take all of those feature capabilities and spread it out for as many people as possible. And the point I was also making is there's this, in the UK Home Office, there's a GitHub for it, and they have this great poster set where it's, hey, if you want to be able to address things for somebody with autism, do this, but don't do this. If you want to express something for deaf and hard of hearing, do this, but don't do this. If you want to express something for dyslexia, do's and don'ts. For screen readers, do's and don'ts. And the funny thing, of course, is that when you gather them all together, you're thinking, I've got this whole list. Great, I now know what to do and what not to do. But when you piece them all together, you start to notice, oh, wait a minute, what works here as a do is spelled out as a don't over here. And what's a don't over here is specifically a do for this example. So you can't meet everyone's needs. It's impossible to be 100% accessible for every potential scenario. So you have to make some judgment calls, and you have to decide. The way that I said it in my talk, as a matter of fact, was I could go through, take the entire WCAG recommendations list to AAA, which is the highest standard of scrutiny, and I could, on the surface, on paper, be 100% compatible. We are 100% accessible based on the AAA requirements of WCAG. And I can hand that product over to somebody and they can go, this is a piece of junk. I can't use this. And also, one of the things that I just because of time limits, I decided to pull this. And it's interesting because I'm sure that some people, if they've seen me talk before, are going, oh my goodness, he did not cover the 10 rules. So there's 10 rules of accessibility that are in just about every one of my talks, and they're not my rules. They're Jeremy Siddick's rules from a book that he wrote 15 years ago. But the rules are still really good, and the idea is, there are ideas of you can only count on your users understanding text. That's the only thing that can be sent and received. Don't make any assumptions beyond that. But really good things that go into that are still helpful, and I touched on them. Your users' time and attention is theirs. Do not take it away from them unless you've got a very good reason to. Do not force your users to learn a bunch of stuff on the fly. If you're going to address accessibility, the worst thing you can do to a user group, especially one that requires accessibility technology, is throw a whole bunch of advancements at them all at one time. If you're going to make a product accessible, it is better to roll it out gradually. And it is also, if you're going to take away features, it is better to take them away gradually, rather than say, hey, guess what? We revamped our entire product and here's version 5 and everything is different. For somebody who's dealing with assistive technology, that's a kiss of death.
That's carnage.
It's awful.
It's totally a different product, and probably you don't have those hoverings and some of those things that, to me at least, to be at, as I, again,
water real quick.
I managed to sneak into Michael's presentation. Was eye-opening, no pun intended, with accessibility, but because there are so many things that we don't think of, we don't never like even realize what is the deal with them. And as you can see, this guy coming back here has a plethora of knowledge, examples, and experience around it. But now, turning back the question, where can people find you, amigo, and reach out to you if there are any more questions?
So I'm in a number of places. First off, if you want to hear me prattle on about software testing topics on a bi-weekly basis generally, along with the lead host for our show, let's be honest, it's his show, I produce it, and I offer some snarky comments every once in a while. But that's the testing show. It's hosted by Qualitest. You can go onto Apple Podcasts, or you can go onto Google Podcasts or Spotify.
Wherever you listen your podcast.
Wherever you listen to your podcast, it's called The Testing Show. So that's one place. I'm sporadically available on Twitter. It comes and goes. Oftentimes I'm much more active when a conference is coming around or I'm doing something that's actively involved in the broader community. Then I'm more, but sometimes but you can find me on Twitter. I am MKL, Michael Kelly Larsen, Test Head. So that's the place. I also have a blog that I also sporadically published to recently, but again, around conferences I publish more, and it's called Test Head. That's where MKL Test Head comes from. I couldn't get testhead.com 15 years ago when I wanted to register the blog. And if you've done any type of performance analysis, or if you've done any type of negative testing or any type of hardware testing, you know what a test head is. It's the place where you are actually launching whatever your vector of attack is, and that's what we call a test head, one word. And so I named my blog Test Head because that was my vector of attack.
Okay.
And so now you know the name. But testhead.com was owned by somebody, and they weren't even using it, but they wanted $10,000 for the name. I'm like, I beg your pardon. Yeah. And so I just put my initials on the front of it. And so in case you're ever wondering, what is that? It's my first 3 initials and the word testhead.
I didn't know, and I was always curious, like, what would the KB stand for? And
it stands for Kelly, which is not actually my middle name. It's my stage name.
Oh.
So for anybody who is curious, where you can also find me, I am the lead singer for a hard rock / heavy metal. I don't care. You can call me what you want. I don't get into this discussion. If I'm metal to you, I'm metal. If I'm hard rock to you, I'm hard rock. I don't care.
Musician.
I'm a musician. Thank you. My band is called Ensign Red, ENSIGN Red. You can find us on Bandcamp. And hopefully soon on some other outlets. We're recording new material right now. Literally recording new material. I had hoped to get my vocals done, but by Saturday night I wasn't happy with them. Told my bandmates, I'm going to Portland. I'll be back Thursday. We'll pick up then.
Never stop working.
Never stop working in that regard.
Or having fun.
Exactly, but it's fun. But also, 30 years ago, I was a performer back in the glamtacular scene, the music scene back in the late 80s and early 90s. And yes, I was part of what is disparagingly referred to in this day and age as the hair band scene. But we called it glam metal or pop metal. I don't care. Doesn't matter. That's what I did, and that's what I was part of. And the very first band I was ever in had 4 Michaels make their way through the band.
Oh, wow.
Like, my guitar player was named Michael. My name was Michael. Both of my drummers that we played with were named Michael. And that's just ridiculous to see on a marquee or listing anything. I said, no. So we were jokingly saying at this one point, what name do we want to use? I looked at my middle name. Spencer's not exactly a rock and roll name. It's just not. And besides, my dad would go, you can't use that name. That's my name. Because my middle name is my dad's name. And I remember going to a party with some friends at one point in time. And I was toying with the idea. I had a few names that I was thinking about using. And Kelly was one of them high on the list. I thought that was a cool one. Kind of an androgynous name. Could be male, could be female. And at the time I thought, that's interesting. That's intriguing. I like that. And I went to a party and I had met a couple of girls there. And I was just chatting with them. And they had asked me, what's your name? And I stopped at that moment and I thought,
Here we go.
Let's do it.
Test run.
if. So, and I didn't quite explain. I said, this is going to sound weird, but work with me for a second. You're just meeting me. You don't know my name. If you had to guess my name,
No way.
what do you think my
Really?
name would be?
They didn't.
And, and I got some interesting ones from, but this one girl kind of looked at me and she just said, you look like a Kelly.
No way.
Wow.
That's
And that was a name that I had on my list.
That is nuts.
And I thought,
That's a winner.
okay, that wins.
Stays.
Yeah,
That's
that's
it.
the win. Yeah,
And
that's it.
I was toying with the idea. I liked Kelly. I thought that would be kind of cool. But when she said you look like a Kelly, I'm like, all right, done.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's where the Kelly comes from. And the reason why this became a thing was when I went to work at Cisco, after being a musician for a number of years, I had never gone through the legal process of changing my name. I wasn't really sure I wanted to. But it was a stage name and I was cool with that. And frankly, you don't have to legally change your name. Let's face it, how many people know who Ramon Estevez is, for example?
Oh, I do. But
You do, but most people
other
don't know him
reasons.
by that name. They know him as Martin Sheen. That's his professional name, but he never legally changed his name. His legal name is still Ramon Estevez. So I kind of took advantage of that. Says, I don't have to change my name. I'll just use it as my stage name, and that's fine. So when I worked for other people in regular jobs, I was still Michael.
Right.
But and my stage name was Kelly. But sometimes I needed people to contact me. Oh, hey, here's where I am and here's where I work. There were a lot of people that only knew me as Kelly.
Right.
And so they would call me up when I got to working at Cisco, they would call Cisco's front line and says, hey, I need to talk to Kelly Larsen. I'm sorry, we don't have anybody here by that name. No, I swear you were. Hold on a second. Is Michael Larsen there?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, can I talk to him, please? They're like, dude, come on. I'm like, all right. And then the work is going, dude, come on. I'm like, okay. So at first I put together my email signature and I put Michael/Kelly Larsen just to indicate to everybody that Michael and Kelly Larsen were the same person. And then I thought that looks stupid and ridiculous. And lots of people use three names to differentiate. So I took the slash out and so for years and years I was known as Michael Kelly Larsen.
it's super funny because it's a situation that I get at times with Señor Performo. It became like more than my actual name. We were having a talk earlier with Tariq and he's like, Leandro, oh, you're Señor Performo. And I'm like, cool, that's a cool situation. So but for everybody watching, we're close to ramping down, again, with pun intended. Look out for Mr. Michael and Mr. Kelly, both the same, don't be confused. And
MKL test head. Put that all in as one string and you're going to find me.
now your turn, amigo Vernon, quickly. What was your talk about? We had some hints during the show, and how can people reach out to you?
So my talk was about career choices for testers, and the source of that was I was in a Twitter space. The question came up in there, so I wrote a blog post answering the question. And then I realised that there was actually, the way I'd answered it in my blog post, which was still a good blog post by the way, but I thought there was more to it than that. Like, the important stuff was not necessarily what job role you could take or aim for. It was like, well, how do you do it and why do you do it? So I tried to expand on that in my talk, and some of it got a little bit woo-woo there.
I liked that part a lot in the talk.
Yeah, but I tried to give people some ideas about the mindset and how you apply it during your career, when you're changing from one role to another. If you're not in a role that you're after, then what do you need to do in order to get that role? So they're the kind of things I talked about. So yeah.
Lots of great recommendations, perspectives. It was a keynote, an awesome way to open with amigo Vernon, and also gave an opportunity to start chatting about it, all the challenges and switching, pandemic, and it's a huge conversation. Amigo, where can people reach out to you, and where is that blog? Because I'm really interested into having a way to see it.
Yeah, so I am on Twitter quite a lot, so you can find me as Tester from LEIC. LEIC is short for Leicester. Tester from Leicester. There's a whole story behind that. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Vernon Richards. I'm on LinkedIn. My blog posts are on TypeShare, so that's typeshare.co/Vernon Richards, and you can find all of my posts there. TypeShare is a bit of a weird blog. It's more of a tool to publish your blog posts in multiple different places, but for the time being, if you want to see what I write, that's the place to go. I think they're the best places to get hold of me, actually.
Okay. And I think you already repeated a little bit of that earlier, but I wanted to get the blog post because you really got my interest when you mentioned that. So for now, that's it on this stream. We will continue having fun here, and I think lunch in any time now.
It is, yeah.
I started to smell some food, so we're all hungry and happy to be here. And I'm sure, amigo Vernon, you will need to crash a little bit. He just arrived directly from the UK, so
The
tough
jet
ride.
lag is real.
Yeah, and it's very, I was going to say a curse word, but we are live. But, but thank you, amigos. Thank you very much for allowing me to crash the recording and to have some fun. Oh, gracias. So, everyone, we're stop the stream here, and I'll be back soon with more fun and more situations from PNSQC 2022, the 40th anniversary edition. So take care, everyone, and we'll